It's 11:47 on a Tuesday night. I'm sitting at my kitchen table in my apartment in New York, still in my work clothes, eating leftover rice straight from the container. My phone is face down on the table because I've learned, after 35 years of being the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who fixes everything, that nothing good comes from checking your phone after 10 p.m. But then it buzzes. And buzzes again. And then, a third time. I flip it over. And there it is, from my sister Raina. No greeting, no hey, no nothing. 5 words. Ear out of the wedding. I stared at those 5 words for so long my rice went cold. Then a second text came in, right below it. Real family only, you were never really one of us anyway, there. I put my phone down. I picked up my fork. I finished my rice. And I thought about the $47,000. Stay with me. Because this story, it doesn't end where you think it ends. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand something about my family. Because if you don't understand where I came from, you won't understand why those 5 words hit different. You won't understand why a grown woman sat at her kitchen table at midnight and felt not just hurt, but almost relieved. My name is Elena Tancredi. I'm 35 years old. I live in New York City. I have a job I worked incredibly hard for, an apartment I pay for entirely by myself, and a savings account I built from nothing, literally nothing, while also sending money home every single month for the past 11 years. 11 years. Let that number sit with you for a second, because I need it to mean something before we go any further. Please subscribe before we go any further, because stories like mine don't end with crying in a bathroom. They end in spreadsheets and court documents, and I need you in my corner for every single page of it. Pun. My parents, Fernando and Miranda Tancredi, are good people. I want to say that up front. They're not villains, they're just comfortable with someone else carrying the weight. That someone was always me. I was the oldest, I was the serious one. I got the scholarship while my sister Raina got the attention. I got the internship while my brother Tommy got the car. I got the promotion while everyone else got the checks. And for a long time I told myself that was just how life worked. You work hard, you don't complain, you take care of your people. My mother Miranda used to say, and I want you to really hear this, she used to say, Elena, you don't need as much, you've always been so strong. Day. What she meant was, you don't need the same things we give everyone else because you don't ask for them, and because you don't ask, we don't give. But when something needs paying for, we always remember how strong you are. The first time I sent money home, I was 24. My parents had a gap in their mortgage payment, $800. I sent it in 2 days, no questions asked. I told myself it was a one-time thing. By the time I was 28, I was sending $1,200 a month, regular as a utility bill, car payments, medical bills, Raina's community college tuition, which she dropped out of twice, Tommy's traffic fines, my mother's dental work, a new refrigerator, a fence, Raina's first apartment deposit. Every single time I was told, we'll pay you back, Every single time they didn't. And every single time I thought about bringing it up, my mother would say something like, Elena, you're the only one we can count on, you know that, right? Ion. And I'd swallow it. Because being needed felt close enough to being loved. Now, let's talk about the wedding. Raina, my younger sister, 29, chronically between jobs, got engaged to a man named Sean about 14 months ago. Sean is fine. Sean is pleasant. Sean has a good smile and no savings account. The moment Raina got that ring on her finger, the family entered what I can only describe as a collective psychotic break of excitement. My mother Miranda started a Pinterest board within 48 hours. My father Fernando started talking about a venue he'd seen in New Jersey, nothing too fancy, just something nice. Nothing too fancy turned out to mean a venue that cost $11,000 to rent for a single Saturday. And within 2 weeks of the engagement, my mother called me. Elena, You know your father and I don't have that kind of money right now, and Raina and Sean are just starting out. We were thinking, since you're doing so well, maybe you could help carry some of this? I asked how much. She hesitated, which is never good. Well, the venue is 11,000, and then there's catering, which Raina found this wonderful place. It's about 8,000. And flowers, which Madeline, you remember our cousin Madeline, she said she could do for 4,000. And then the dress, the photographer, the DJ, Dayal. I did the math in my head while she talked. It was going to be somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000. And my mother, God love her, presented this to me not as a question, but as a fait accompli. Like the plan was already decided. Like the only thing left was for me to confirm my routing number. I should have said no right then. I didn't. I said, let me look at my numbers and get back to you. Air. And I got back to her, and I said yes, because Raina was my sister, because I loved her despite everything, and because somewhere deep in me I thought maybe this big, important, once-in-a-lifetime moment, maybe this would be the thing that finally made them see me. That was my first mistake. If you're still here, if you're watching this and nodding because you know exactly what it feels like to be the one who says yes when you should say no, please subscribe right now. Subscribe, because your support reminds me that I'm not alone in this, and neither are you. Pont. This story is about to turn, and I need you here when it does. For the next 7 months, I was the architect of my sister's wedding. I wasn't the maid of honor. That was her best friend Angela, who was lovely, but also contributed approximately $0 to the budget. I wasn't even formally in the wedding party. That conversation never happened, and I didn't push it because I was afraid of being seen as demanding. But I was the one paying. I paid the venue deposit, $6,000. I paid the first catering installment, $3,000. I paid for Madeline's flower consultation. I covered the engagement party when my parents said they were a little short this month. I paid for Raina's bridal dress alterations when she found a gown that was just slightly over the budget she'd already spent my money on. The running total was moving toward $47,000. Now, in the middle of all of this, there was a man in my life. His name was Alexander. We'd been together for 2 years. He was kind, methodical, and, this matters, he was a financial analyst. He understood money the way other people understood music, instinctively. From the very beginning, Alexander had one request. Elena, write everything down, every dollar, keep records. Asked her. I thought he was being overly cautious. I started keeping records anyway. A spreadsheet, every payment, every date, every amount, what it was for, whether there was a written acknowledgement, his idea, not mine. I thought we'd never need it. Oh, we needed it. Now, around month 4 of wedding planning, things started to get strange. Raina started making comments, little ones at first, things like, Elena, you don't really understand the vision we're going for, when I offered an opinion on centerpieces I was helping to pay for. Or maybe just let us handle the decisions and you focus on the financial side, which was the most elegant way anyone has ever told me to shut up and write a check. My mother backed her up every time. And my brother Tommy, sweet, useless Tommy, once said during a family dinner I'd driven 3 hours to attend, you know, Elena, you've kind of made everything about money. It's supposed to be a celebration. I looked at him across the table. He was wearing shoes I had paid for. I smiled and passed the bread. Then came the guest list incident. About 2 months before the wedding, Raina sent a revised guest list to my mother. A copy got forwarded to me, I think by accident, or maybe as a test, I still don't know. My name wasn't on it. Not as a bridesmaid, not as a guest, not as Elena, the sister who paid for 90% of this event. Just not on it. I called my mother. Oh, Elena, she said, and I could hear her choosing her words carefully. Raina just felt that, with everything going on, she wanted the day to feel a certain way. You know how sensitive you can be sometimes. Sensitive. I said, Mom, am I invited to my sister's wedding? R. Long pause. We were going to talk to you about that. That was the moment something in me went very, very quiet. 3 weeks later, a Tuesday night, 11:47 p.m. You already know what the text said. You're out of the wedding, real family only, you were never really one of us anyway. I sat with those words until midnight. Then I opened my laptop. And I opened the spreadsheet Alexander had made me keep. And I looked at the number at the bottom of the last column. $47,340. $47,340. Over 7 months. For a wedding I was not invited to. I closed the laptop, I went to bed. I did not cry, and I want to tell you, that's not because I was strong. It was because I had nothing left to feel. I was empty in a way I hadn't been since the first time I sent that $800 mortgage payment and told myself it was a one-time thing. In the morning, I called Alexander. He answered on the first ring. I saw your texts last night, he said. Erder, how are you? Dear. I need you to help me figure out what I can legally get back, I said. Silence. Then, okay, come over, bring the spreadsheet. Here's what I learned, sitting at Alexander's kitchen table with a pot of coffee and a color-coded spreadsheet. When you pay for something specific, a venue deposit, a catering installment, a documented service, and you have a paper trail, you have leverage. Not rage, not volume, not a group chat explosion. Leverage. Alexander walked me through every line. Some payments were gone, cash transactions with no paper trail, no acknowledgement, no contract. Those were gifts. I had to accept that. But many of them were documented. Bank transfers, emails confirming what the money was for, text messages from my mother saying things like, "The venue confirmed your deposit, thank you so much." Venmo transfers with notes. One very helpful text from Raina herself 6 months ago saying, "Can you send the rest of the catering deposit? I'll make sure you're paid back after the wedding, I promise." I promise, those 2 words. Alexander looked at me over his coffee cup and said, very calmly, Elena, that text is a verbal promise of repayment, documented, time-stamped. That's not a gift, that's a loan. I stared at him. He said, how much is recoverable? We went through every line, conservative estimates, only what we could clearly document. $22,400. He said, do you want to send a formal demand letter? I said, what happens if I do? He said, a few things. Best case, they pay you back and this is over. Most likely, they don't, and you file in court. Small claims in New York handles up to $10,000. Anything above that, you'd need civil court, which means a lawyer, a SAM. I said, and the wedding? He said, when's the remaining venue payment due? I pulled up my email. 12 days. The venue had a contract, with my name on it, because I was the one who signed it. Alexander looked at me, very carefully. He said, Elena, you signed the contract. I said, I know. He said, which means you have the right to cancel it. The room got very, very quiet. I want to be clear about something before I tell you what I did next. I did not do this out of spite. I did not do this to ruin my sister's wedding, or to hurt my family, or to win some petty war. I did it because for 11 years I had been treated like a resource instead of a person, and the moment I was no longer useful, the moment Raina decided she wanted her perfect day without the complicated sister who paid for it, I was disposed of. And I decided that was the last time. So, the phone calls. On a Wednesday morning, I called the venue. I spoke with a woman named Holly who was the events coordinator. I explained that there had been a change in the contract holder. I asked about the cancellation policy. Holly said there was a 30% penalty on confirmed bookings. The venue had confirmed $11,000. 30% was $3,300. The remaining $7,700? Refundable to the contract holder. To me. I thanked Holly. I said I needed to think about it and would call back within 48 hours. Then I called the caterer. Similar conversation. I was on the contract. I was the one who'd made payments. They asked me to come in person with documentation if I wanted to make changes. I said I would. Then I called my mother. She answered with her warm voice, the one she uses when she knows something is wrong but is hoping to talk around it. Elena, I was going to call you today. Asar. Mom, I said. Adam need to talk to you about the wedding deposits. Silence. I signed the venue contract, I said. And I've made the majority of the catering payments. I need you to understand that if I don't make the next round of payments, those contracts become my liability, which means they're also my choice. More silence. Then, Elena, what are you saying, IR? I'm saying I'd like to have a family conversation about what happened, about the text Raina sent me, about being told I'm not real family, and I'd like that conversation to happen before the next payment is due. My mother's voice got tight. You would cancel your sister's wedding over a text message? I would like a conversation, I said again, very evenly. I'd like that to happen soon. She said she'd call me back. She called back 4 hours later. The family wanted to meet. That weekend at my parents' house. I said I'd be there. I called Alexander and told him. He said, I'm coming with you. IR. I said, this is a family thing. He said, I know, I'm coming anyway. Air. I need you to stay with me right now, because the meeting, the actual moment this family sat in a room together, is something I have thought about every single day since it happened. If this story is hitting you somewhere you recognize, please subscribe. Your support means everything, and it reminds me I'm not alone in this. And if you've ever been the one who gives and gives until there's nothing left, I need you to see how this ends. Pawn. Saturday afternoon, my parents' house in New Jersey, 3 hours from my apartment. I drove. Alexander sat in the passenger seat. He had a folder. Inside the folder were printed copies of every documented payment, every relevant text message, and a one-page summary he'd put together that laid out the timeline cleanly and without emotion. He'd also drafted, at my request, a formal repayment proposal. Not a legal document, not a threat, a proposal, a way for the family to choose the easier path. We walked in. My mother Miranda was in the kitchen. She'd made food. She always makes food when she's nervous, as if lasagna can diffuse a conflict. My father Fernando was in his chair, which is never a good sign. My brother Tommy was on the couch trying to look invisible, which he always fails at. Raina was there with Sean, who looked like he genuinely did not want to be in this room, which honestly made me like him slightly more. And then there was Raina's mother-in-law-to-be, a woman named Bonnie, who had apparently been invited to this meeting by Raina without telling me. I looked at Alexander. He looked at me. We sat down. My mother started with, Elena, we just want to talk through everything calmly, family first, right? Family first. From the woman who raised a daughter, who texted me that I wasn't real family. I let Alexander open the folder. He placed the one-page summary on the coffee table, very quietly, like it was nothing at all, like it was just a piece of paper. I put this together, he said, down so we're all working from the same set of facts. Raina stared at it like it was a weapon. It was. The room read. Slowly. My father's face went through several colors. My mother pressed her lips together until they went white. Tommy read it twice. I think because he couldn't quite process the total. Bonnie, Sean's mother, the uninvited guest, looked up from the paper and looked directly at Raina and said, very quietly, $47,000? Raina said, it wasn't like that, Bonnie said, Air Reina, $47,000. R. That was the moment the room shifted. Because it wasn't coming from me. It wasn't the complicated sister making it about money. It was an outside person, a neutral person, looking at a number and having a completely normal human reaction to it. My father spoke for the first time. He said, "Elena, we intended to pay you back." "Oh. When?" I asked, very simply. He didn't have an answer. I said, "Dad, I have a text from Reina saying she'd pay me back after the wedding. I have emails confirming I'm the contract holder on the venue. I have bank records of every transfer. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here because I was told via text message that I'm not real family, and I need to understand what that means for the agreements we've made." Reina said, and I want you to understand she said this out loud in front of her fiancé's mother. "Elena, you always make everything transactional. This is my wedding. This is supposed to be about love." I looked at her. I said, "Reina, I made your wedding possible, transactionally." Silence. Sean, to his credit, put his head in his hands. Bonnie stood up and said she needed some air and excused herself to the back porch. My mother started crying. And my father, my quiet, old-fashioned father, who had never once in my adult life said anything remotely confrontational to me, looked at Reina and said, "You need to fix this, Anna." The meeting did not resolve everything that day. I want to be honest about that. This isn't a story where everyone has a tearful revelation and hugs it out in an hour. Real life doesn't work like that. Real family drama doesn't get wrapped up with a bow just because the right things get said. What the meeting did was this. It made the invisible visible. For the first time in 11 years, the number was on the table. My parents could not pretend they hadn't taken it. Reina could not pretend it hadn't been given. And with Bonnie in the room, a woman who would be joining this family, the performance of normalcy my family had always relied on was suddenly much harder to maintain. I drove home that night. Alexander held my hand on the highway for a long time without saying anything. In the week that followed, several things happened. First, my mother called me every day. The first 2 calls were defensive. She was explaining, justifying, contextualizing. By the 4th call, she was crying without explanation. By the 6th call, she said something I had waited 35 years to hear. "Elena, I think we've asked too much of you for a long time." I didn't say anything. I just let that sit. Second, Sean called me on his own without Reina. He apologized, sincerely, specifically, with details, for the way things had gone. He said he hadn't known the full picture until the meeting. He said Reina had let him believe I was contributing a little to help out. He found out at the meeting in front of his own mother that the number was $47,000. He said, "Elena, I want to make this right. ART." I said, "Thank you, Sean, that means a lot. ART." Third, Reina texted me. Not an apology, not at first. The first text was, "I hope you're happy with what you did to my wedding." I did not respond. The second text, 2 days later, "Mom says I need to talk to you. I did not respond. The third text, 4 days after that, at 2 a.m., "Elena, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to say I'm sorry because I don't think I've ever actually done it. Not to you. I think I've treated you like you didn't need things the same way I did. I think I was wrong. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know." I read that one 3 times. I put the phone down. I picked it up again. I typed, "I know, I'll call you this weekend. IR. Now, the practical part, because this story is also about paperwork. With Alexander's help, I sent a formal written demand letter, drafted by a lawyer friend of his named Lance, to my parents and to Reina, itemizing the $22,400 in documented loans and requesting repayment within 30 days. The letter was professional, not cruel. It stated facts, it named figures, it included copies of documentation, it provided a payment plan option. My parents received it on a Tuesday. By Thursday, my father had called Lance directly to discuss terms. My parents did not have $22,400 liquid, but they had equity and they had assets. What they did not have anymore was the ability to pretend the number didn't exist. We negotiated a structured repayment, a formal written agreement signed by all parties, outlining monthly payments over 24 months with a small interest provision that Lance insisted on to make it real. My father signed it. My mother signed it. Raina signed it. Every month on the 15th, a payment comes in. And every month on the 16th, I sit with my coffee and I update the spreadsheet, and I watch the number go down. The wedding happened. Smaller. At a different venue, one that didn't cost $11,000. The flowers were simpler. The catering was buffet style. Sean's mother, Bonnie, it turned out, had opinions about what a wedding needed to cost, and those opinions became very relevant very quickly once she understood the full financial picture. I was invited. I went. I wore the green dress I'd had for 4 years and spent exactly $0 on anything for the day except a card and a modest gift off the registry. When I walked in, Raina looked at me across the room. She was in her dress, the one I had helped pay for the alterations on months ago in a different version of our relationship. She looked beautiful. She walked over. She said, "I'm glad you're here. Asmar A." I said, "Me too, AR." It was not a movie moment. There was no orchestral swell. We didn't fall into each other's arms crying. We stood there for a second, two sisters on complicated ground, and then someone called her name and she turned away. But she had said she was glad I was there. And she had meant it. That was enough for that day. I've been thinking about what to say here for a long time. Because I don't want to end this story by pretending I have everything figured out. I don't. My family is still complicated. The dynamic hasn't magically transformed. My mother still sometimes calls with a small thing she needs help with, and I still have to make choices about what I'm willing to do. But something changed after all of this, something fundamental. The first change was in them. For the first time, my family understood that my money was real, that it cost me something, that it wasn't an endless pipeline attached to a person who didn't have feelings about it. The formalization of the debt, the signed agreement, the monthly payments, did something that 11 years of quiet resentment never could. It made the reality visible. The second change was in me. I stopped waiting to be seen. For 35 years, I had operated on the assumption that if I gave enough, helped enough, sacrificed enough, someone in my family would one day turn to me and say, "We see you. We know what this cost. We know who you are. Saranu." After the meeting, after the spreadsheet on the coffee table and my father's face cycling through those colors and my mother's lips going white, I realized something. I had already been seen. They had always known. They had always known what I was carrying. They had always known the number was growing. They had made choices every month to let me carry it, because it was easier than carrying it themselves. And the moment I laid it out, clearly documented without anger, they couldn't unknow it anymore. That's not forgiveness. That's not resolution. That's just the truth. Finally, sitting on a table with nobody able to pretend otherwise. I should tell you about Alexander. I know I've been mentioning him throughout this story, and you deserve to know who he is to me now. He drove 3 hours with me to a family meeting he wasn't invited to. He sat quietly at a table where emotions were running extremely high, and only spoke when he needed to. He never tried to be the hero of someone else's story. He made a folder. He made a spreadsheet. He said, "I'm coming anyway," when I told him it was a family thing. On the way home that Saturday night, about an hour into the drive, he said very simply, "You did that really well." I said I was terrified. ARAS. He said, "Yeah, I know, you did it anyway. Ah. I'm not going to make this into something it isn't yet, but I will say, there are people in your life who show you who they are in the moments that don't cost them anything, and there are people who show you who they are when it does." Alexander paid a cost, his time, his energy, his careful analytical mind, for someone who wasn't him. That's the kind of person worth keeping. I made this video because I needed to say it out loud. But I also made it because I know I'm not the only one. I know there are people watching this right now. Maybe it's late, maybe you're tired, and you are the Elena in your family. You are the one who gives and tells yourself it's because you love them, and you do. That part is true. But love doesn't mean you owe someone unlimited access to your resources. Love doesn't mean you have no right to documentation. Love doesn't mean that the moment you protect yourself, you've become the villain. You are allowed to say, I did this for you, and I need you to acknowledge that. You are allowed to say, that was a loan, not a gift. You are allowed to keep records. You are allowed to call a lawyer. You are allowed to sit at a table with a folder and let the silence after a number sit in the room for as long as it needs to. And you are allowed to still love your family after you do all of that. These things are not in conflict. The paperwork doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you finally love yourself enough to matter in the equation too. 6 months after the meeting. I'm sitting at my kitchen table again. Different night. The rice is still warm this time. My phone buzzes. It's Raina. A photo. Her and Sean, somewhere with trees and mountains in the background. A weekend trip, I think. She looks happy. He looks like a man who knows he married someone difficult and has decided it's worth it, which is the best thing you can say about anyone. The caption just says, wish you were here next time, Air go. I look at that text for a long time. Then I type back, next time, Ace. And I mean it. Not because everything is fixed. Not because the hurt is gone or the history is erased or the spreadsheet doesn't still live on my desktop like a small monument to everything we never talked about. But because she reached out. Because she's trying. Because I am still her sister, even after everything, even after the text, even after the meeting, even after the formal demand letter and the signed repayment agreement, and the smaller venue and the buffet catering. We're still here. Both of us. That has to count for something. And it does. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you. Seriously, this was not an easy thing to put into words. It took me a long time to figure out how to tell this without being defined by it, without becoming a person whose whole identity is what was done to her. I'm still figuring it out, honestly. But I know this. The people who watched this whole thing, who stayed through the spreadsheet and the meeting and the repayment plan and the wedding and the epilogue, those are my people. Please subscribe. Your support means everything, and it reminds me that I am not alone in this. Pont. And if you know someone who is the Elena in their family, the one who gives too much and asks for too little, share this with them. Not so they can be angry, but so they know it's possible to stand up quietly, document carefully, love unconditionally, and still protect yourself. Those things can all exist at once. I'm proof. My name is Elena Tancredi. I'm 35 years old. I live in New York. And I finally put my name on the line that matters.